And we're joined now by Senator Maria Cantwell, who is the top Democrat on the Commerce Committee, which has oversight of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, and the National Weather Service. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning.
These agencies are being looked at carefully right now, as you know. Just this morning in Texas, we are seeing the National Weather Service issue another flash flood warning for that very same part of central Texas, Kerrville. In fact, the ground search for victims had to be halted because of this warning. There's been so much scrutiny of what went wrong or what more could have been done. In your view, at the federal level, is the National Weather Service doing everything it should be doing?
You mean at this moment?
Yes, did it function as intended?
Well, I think what's happening here, and we need to take a pause. Glad the president and first lady went, and definitely there's a lot of things being said. But what the real question is what can we do to improve the weather forecasting of this nation, to use science, to use better assets, to really do a once-in-a-lifetime investment to upgrade the system so that we could have given people in Kerrville more time, more warning, and the same for tornadoes and hurricanes and fires. And so I think what we're learning is that in this last week, we've had 4 events that have all broken huge records for weather and precipitation. That means more flooding. So we know now we're having more extreme weather. What is our response to that? To make sure we never have another Kerrville again.
So more extreme weather, more stresses on the system. At the same time, you have the Trump administration at least proposing that they're going to do a 27% budget cut to NOAA. The Commerce Secretary, though, said he's not going to touch public forecasting. We've seen, though, on the Democratic side, Leader Schumer say there should be an investigation about whether staff cuts, for example, led to or contributed to the Texas disaster. Are Democrats being too quick here to blame the politics?
You know, I liked I liked your opening story about the GAO report and saw what my colleagues presented. You know, I was on that call the day the president was shot and You're talking about Butler. In Butler, and I basically asked the question on the call that day: did you guys use drones? There was like dead silence. So I'm glad now that GAO, a respected arm of our organization and government, is producing a report. Do you want the same kind of report a year from now? Yes. What we want is to make sure that we understand what happened, but doing blame gaming isn't going to bring people back. But the press has every right to ask hard questions to try to figure out what do we need to do to improve weather forecasting.
Well, I ask that because the DNC and Democratic leaders have said things like this. You're talking in substantial, specific policy language. Yes. That's not what's coming from leadership. That's why I'm asking you.
Well, what's important to know is that in this particular storm, what we had is very warm surface conditions in the Gulf. That meant the storm was going to move slower. It meant it was going to drop more precipitation. We as a nation shouldn't be second to Europe or anybody in being a weather-ready nation. We should be the smartest government in the world, using technology, analyzing the data, and putting a forecast system into place that gives people that kind of system. So just recently in the Midwest, that work by NOAA and the weather forecasting system and the labs helped give information about how to get out of the way of a tornado 2 hours in advance, not 15 minutes or 13 minutes, but 2 hours. And I'm going to send a letter to the president making 5 recommendations, and some of them are very bipartisan recommendations, things that Senator Cruz or Wicker or Moran support, that basically make this once-in-a-lifetime investment so we have the best information, the best analysis, the best people to interpret that on the ground for the local responders. And let's help Americans get out of the way of a storm.
So on that point, in your recommendations, we are still seeing a proposed budget cut. We are still seeing staff cuts. And the administration is talking about privatizing parts of NOAA.
Yep.
Can you do all of that and then accomplish the outcome you're asking for?
Well, I think that's what we're going to try to draw attention to. Senator Cruz and I both support upgrading our Doppler radar system. That is, having a system that gives you more information about what the storm is likely to do. It's one of the reasons why Europe is a little ahead of us, and you hear about their forecasting system, is because they do more analytics around data that give them higher predictability. I think we're in the same place. Let's get the best system in the country. Senator Wicker and I support these ocean buoys. Those buoys tell you the temperature of the ocean. Why was that so important in this case? Because you needed to know that temperature tells you how much that storm might move or hold in a pattern and how much precipitation it might move forward and dump in a community.
And you believe this has to happen at the federal level. It's not a state-led response in that way, or forecasting rather.
Well, this is a national responsibility, and I think if you want your snow shoveled, yeah, you want the mayor to show up, but if you want accurate weather information, it's not community to community. It's a national system, and we share that with the local people and help them best respond. And today, my state has a red flag warning out. It's right in the Seattle Times, telling the whole state very bad conditions today, very hot temperatures, very high winds. That means a fire could be explosive.
So a lot of warning ahead of time. Let's talk more about this on the other side of this break. Stay with us if you will. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Face the Nation. We return to our conversation with Senator Maria Cantwell. Just to pick up where we left off in talking about how to at least warn people further in advance of potential weather-related disasters. There is still no Senate-confirmed head of NOAA. You did go through with a hearing on the committee very recently, and the nominee, Dr. Jacobs, told you that the main mission will still be preserved under this administration. Do you feel comfortable in the potential leadership of Dr. Jacobs? Will you vote to confirm him?
I haven't decided yet. I have to see for the record. He did say some very positive things, that he wanted a NOAA Organic Act. He wants the Weather Act that Senator Cruz and I have proposed. He said he wanted some other resources there. I got to drill down on exactly what he thinks is going to happen on the science mission and how we're going to preserve that. Because the nation is now spending billions of dollars on storms. In fact, Susan Collins and I had a report from GAO in the last year that showed how much we were spending on the impacts of climate and extreme weather. So the point is, it's a minuscule investment to keep some of these science research functions at NOAA to help them better prepare people for hurricanes, for tornadoes, and floods. It's a minuscule amount of money. And so we want to be smarter about it. And the more you can move people and resources out of the way of a storm, the more you can predict what might happen, the better prepared we're going to be. And that's going to help us save lives and certainly save dollars. So I want to get from him exactly how he thinks that this is going to work. But he did say some positive things about the structure. People don't understand, but NOAA is really a science arm of our government to make all of this for the nation and the Weather Service. So they literally have to fund the hurricane hunters. Those are the planes that fly into a hurricane, and we've helped support that in the past in a bipartisan way. It basically funds these the research that really, I think probably where Europe is right now is they just do better analysis of the data. They're not doing anything extraordinarily better than us. They're probably just spending more time. And if that is a few $1 million and supercomputing time, we should do it.
Speaking of Europe and the trade conversation the president has renewed just on Saturday, saying he's going to put tariffs on the European Union and up them on Mexico as well by August the 1st. There's been a lot of concern about what it would do to the economy. The stock market seems to be brushing off the impact. Out in your state, Boeing, huge contributor to the U.S. economy, is headquartered there. In fact, they had a 27% increase in airplane deliveries in June, 8 to China, because there's been this sort of cooling off with them. If that's on the back burner, are you less concerned about the trade war?
Oh, no. I'm very concerned. We're in an endless summer of trade, war, tariffs, and chaos. I'm very concerned about this. It is impacting our businesses. We are one of the most trade-dependent states in the nation, but it's impacting our ports. I mean, literally, trade with our ports is, at least 20% down over last year, the month of May, from the previous year. The Association of Washington Businesses is releasing a study that they've previewed with us, and of their membership, 75% of them have said they already are impacted by the tariffs.
So like medium-sized businesses, or?
Yes, there are probably a few would define as large, but they're saying that 30% of them are saying that they basically have already raised cost in some way. Mm-hmm. And 15% of them said we've either laid off people or are planning to lay off people in the future. So for us, we are seeing the economic impacts of this, and our competitiveness, even though people have planned with storing a lot of material, getting supplies in, trying to prepare for this up and down, is really having an effect on costs.
So it sounds like you're saying at this point, we haven't yet seen fully or felt fully the economic impact. So for the market to be betting that the president's either going to back down or that this isn't as hurtful as some predicted, you're saying just wait and see.
Oh, I think the market has been very clear. When he says he's going forward with tariffs, they don't like it, and you see a drop. And when he takes a pause, but that's not the issue. The issue is small businesses. We have, 75% of jobs are created by small businesses, and those small businesses don't have the same flexibility that a big company does to move out of the way of a supply chain that is now being disrupted. Or, there was a Japanese company, big supplier to U.S. auto manufacturers, that went out of business. Mm-hmm. So we now have aluminum prices that affects everything from our transportation infrastructure investment to, I heard on Amazon that tea kettles went up, like 40 or 50% in cost. So it's affecting all sorts of products. And, while we may not see all of that at this moment, I guarantee you, as the next quarter results come in, I'm sure we will see some effects of these tariffs. So let's get back to using our alliances to create, why aren't we working with Europe right now to counter, Russia, instead of being in an argument with them on some of these issues that could be resolved in a different form?
We will see if an agreement is reached before August the 1st. Senator, thank you very much for joining us today. We'll be right back with more Face the Nation. We go now to the chair of the Homeland Security Committee, Senator Rand Paull, who joins us from Bowling Green, Kentucky. Good morning to you, Senator.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Today is that one-year mark since then candidate Trump was shot at in Butler, Pennsylvania. You have released an accountability report. We've had a look at it, and it details that assets were requested by the Secret Service, including requests made over the phone, and they were denied. You also say that the former Secret Service director made false claims under oath when Kimberly Cheadle said there were no denials. Was she misled, or are you accusing her of lying?
She did not tell the truth. She said that there were no assets that were requested in advance. We found at least 4 occasions, actually maybe 5 occasions, where requests were made. The primary request that was made by both Trump's Secret Service detail as well as his campaign was for counter snipers. Counter snipers were denied until Butler. So thank God on that day in Butler County, Pennsylvania, that was the first time he was allowed counter snipers. If he had not had counter snipers, that assassin would have popped up again. He did pop up again to continue firing, and that's when he was taken out. But thank God we had the counter snipers there. But why were they denied for months and months? When they finally did ask for them, they mysteriously, magically appeared. They found them where they needed. They just weren't trying hard enough. So it was a cascade of errors. It was just one error after another. When we talked to the people in charge of security, everybody pointed a finger at someone else. We said, who was responsible for that roof? The roof where the assassin lay with a direct sight line. Nobody wanted responsibility. Everybody said it was somebody else. There was plenty of time to take him off the stage. The suspicious person with the rangefinder who became the shooter, many times he was spotted by police with suspicion. That should have been enough to take the president off the stage. Even with him on the roof, there was about a 3-minute period when he could have been taken from the stage, and yet no one was fired. Some of these people could be in charge of security for another presidential candidate, and really that's a danger that someone of the people that were in charge at Butler could be in charge again. That's not right.
Well, the President of the United States has said he is satisfied with the answers he's received in regard to what went wrong. But back on the point about not telling the truth to Congress. The report found that there were 10 occasions where resources were requested and denied or not filled. And in fact, when it came to Butler, the counter surveillance drone request was made over the phone. So when you say someone was not telling the truth, is it that there was no record of requests and denials? Was this knowingly misleading Congress, or was this like a culture of cover-up within the agency?
I think it was a cultural cover-up for the agency. They did not want to assess blame. They did not want to look internally, and they wanted to discount any of their actions that might have led to this. This was a cover-your-ass sort of moment, and I do believe that they did know. There's no way that the Director of Secret Service, that she did not know that these requests had been made. And so, yes, it was a huge failure. And if you talk to the current head of the Secret Service, who was Trump's lead detail, and Trump has a great deal of confidence in, he'll admit that these failures existed. Mm-hmm. But even the disciplinary action that they finally took, they only took because I subpoenaed. I wanted to know who was disciplined. We weren't going to release the names, but I wanted to know who was disciplined and what the discipline was. They refused for a year to tell me that. They told me that a week ago. You saw the news reports. But some of the people were just disciplined 2 weeks ago. So they weren't going to discipline anybody until I subpoenaed and asked them what they had done. But in the end, no one was fired. Yeah. The supervisor who heard about the person on the roof, who did not tell the detail immediately to take the president off the stage, there was a several-minute delay there. He stayed in his job. He did retire recently, but stayed in his job. So, no, I think even the investigation by the Secret Service was inadequate, but that's why we need to have congressional oversight.
Are you going to request that all requests for assets be made in writing and not over the phone so people can deny that they were ever asked for help?
Yeah, I think they were made in writing as well, and I think some were made by phone, but I think the ones that made by phone were following up on things they made in writing. Somebody was just begging for assets. And think about it. President Trump has had extraordinary rallies, no matter what political perspective you come from. He has extraordinary rallies which have extraordinary risk, much greater risk than having 200 people in an auditorium where everybody's thoroughly screened and the location is secure. These things really take a lot of detail, but when we asked the Secret Service who was in charge of that roof, how could you walk through at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and see that roof? Nobody walked through. Nobody was in charge. Everybody said, oh, she was in charge of the roof, or he was in charge of the roof. No one would actually admit to be in charge of security for Butler.
So the big, beautiful bill that the president asked for gives $1.2 billion to the Secret Service. Does money fix that? And what do you say to the family member of the gentleman killed that day? Are we ever going to know the motive of the shooter?
I think we aren't going to know the motive, and I take that at face value. I know a lot of times when we don't get something and we suspect something, we think government's lying to us. And look, I have my doubts about government on many levels, but I think on this level they've tried their best, and I don't think there's a secret answer that they're not revealing to us. I think they just don't know. What we do know is the failures in security, and that the Corey Comparatari could have possibly been saved by having better security that day. And this boy was seen 4 hours before the shooting. He was seen again 45 minutes before. 3 minutes before the shooting, the crowd is chanting, "Man on a roof, man on a roof." 45 seconds to go as he's assembling his gun. 45 seconds is a long time. Yeah. Nobody told them to take the president off the stage. Inexcusable, terrible security, but whoever's in charge should have been fired and really should never be in charge of this type of, or have this type of responsibility again.
On the question of forewarning, but on a different topic, this Friday is the deadline for both the Senate and House to vote on a plan to claw back about $9 billion for foreign aid, including also support for NPR and PBS. Some of your fellow Republicans, like Rounds, like Murkowski and Collins, have said they are worried about cuts to local radio and public broadcasters in their areas. We looked, and in your state of Kentucky, public broadcasters provide critical emergency warnings for the government. If there's a storm, for example, are you concerned that these kind of cuts are going to endanger people?
You know, I got my start on public television, KET in Kentucky, being a commentator for my taxpayer group that I started. So, you know, I am not an enemy of public TV, but at the same time, we have a $2 trillion deficit, and what we'll be presented with is a $9 billion cut in spending. And can we and should we at least start cutting $9 billion? Yes. If I had my druthers and I could plan it and I could present the package, I like the idea of across-the-board cuts of a smaller percentage. So instead of taking 100% of public TV, what you do is you take 6% of everything. But the only way that works is you literally have to take 6% of every dollar, and then you have to figure out how to make it work so it's not absorbed by the poor or the needy in our country. And you could do that with a penny plan. You can balance your budget within 5 years, but it takes a real 6% cut of everything.
Yeah.
But I think people are more willing to accept a haircut on things they like if everybody is accepting the same sort of level of cut.
So are you saying there that you are still going to vote for this? Are there 51 Republicans who are going to vote to cut all this funding and pull it back?
I suspect it's going to be very close. I don't know if it will be modified in advance, but I can't really honestly look Americans in the face and say that I'm going to be doing something about the deficit if I can't cut $9 billion, even though there are people who make arguments for it, and I can make an argument for a different way to cut it. We're going to be presented with a $9 billion cut and a $2.2 trillion deficit. So we have to cut spending. Absolutely have to cut spending.
And a record boost to the debt ceiling that just happened in the bill you did not vote for, but Republicans did. Senator Paull, thank you for your time today. We'll be right back. We go now to Congressman French Hill. He is the chair of the House Financial Services Committee. Welcome back to the broadcast. Your ears must have been ringing with the two senators who started the program because they were talking about grabbing some of those frozen Russian assets. You moved a bill and gave the president authority to actually seize them during the last administration under the Repo Act. The U.S. has never before seized central bank assets from another country. Do you know if the Treasury Department is going to do so now?
Well, Margaret, it's good to be with you. Yes, I certainly worked very hard with former Foreign Affairs Chairman Mike McCall and others to put that in our 2024 national security package during the Biden administration because we wanted another arrow in the quiver for the president to not just seize those assets, but to convert them to the benefit of Ukraine. But we could never get consensus between the United States and Europe for doing that, despite a unanimous vote of the Council of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe supporting it. So I continue to urge President Biden to do that. We got the interest off those frozen assets to benefit Ukraine. But I think it's time for the president to convert those seized assets to a trust account for the benefit of Ukraine. I'm glad to hear both Senators Blumenthal and Graham support that idea. It's time to do it. And I've encouraged Secretary Bessent that this should be a priority for President Trump.
On another topic, because you have some oversight in the financial space, I want to ask you about comments made in regard to Fed Chair Jerome Powell. The president says the economy's in good shape, but he still complains about the head of the central bank, says he's doing a terrible job because he's not lowering interest rates. On another network today, the president's top economic advisor said the White House is looking into whether the president has the authority to fire Chair Powell. Do you believe the president has the power and authority to fire the Fed president?
You know, Margaret, I don't, and I believe President Trump has spoken about this several times over the past few years, including recently. Mr. Powell's governorship, his chairmanship is up next spring. The president has vacancies coming up on the Fed board where he could name another governor. But look, just because Congress created the Fed and that we believe that it should be independent in the setting of monetary policy, it doesn't mean that it's immune from criticism. And every president since World War II has had choice words for the Fed chair when they've not been in sync with the direction of the president. So look, the Congress continues to do oversight. I set up a special task force to oversee the Fed's decision making since the 2008 financial crisis. We have that investigation, review, and oversight underway, and we'll continue it.
I think you'd acknowledge that most presidents might have had those choice words behind closed doors, not on social media posts on a regular basis, Congressman. But on crypto, I want to ask you, crypto has been the Wild West, right, in many ways, because they don't have the same kind of regulation in the digital asset space that there does exist for banks and financial services. You've got a few measures coming up this week. How do you make sure, as you put these regulations in place that kind of help crypto become more mainstream, that it doesn't also benefit some of those on the black market, for example, who use this to evade oversight?
Exactly. Well, in the work in the Senate led by Bill Hagerty and Tim Scott and Cynthia Lummis on the Genius Act to create a dollar-backed stablecoin, we've heavily influenced that legislation over the 2 years of previous work by the House. And our Clarity Act, which sets up the rules of the road for what's a commodity, what's a security, how to use digital assets, how to store them, how to custody them. These are the rules that will protect consumers, will limit access to our market and our investors from entities outside the United States trying to influence the crypto markets. We have none of that today. What we've had is a mismatch of rules by enforcement in the Biden administration, and I believe the bills we'll have on the House floor this week will protect investors, consumers, and make America, as President Trump wants, a leader in financial technology and crypto and digital assets innovation.
Well, you know, sir, that the concern is that this is the patina of protection of consumers without actual muscle behind it. It was interesting to see, and many Americans who hold mortgages might have noticed, that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who buy and sell mortgages, the head of the agency, the Federal Housing Agency, Bill Pulte, told them they'll have to prepare a proposal to review crypto as an asset on mortgage applications. Given the huge taxpayer stake in Fannie and Freddie, are you comfortable with people using crypto, something that isn't really, tangible in many ways, to pay for a down payment on a house?
Well, look at Bitcoin, for example. One can now buy Bitcoin. It is a commodity. It's been determined that it's a commodity by the CFTC and the SEC. One can hold it in their brokerage account through an exchange-traded product, an ETF, ETP. It's now an asset for millions of Americans, and it certainly could be treated like a stock or a bond or cash as a contribution to someone's net worth to qualify for a mortgage. And if we pass Clarity this week, which I expect we will on a bipartisan basis, and we craft a dollar-backed stable coin like Genius offered by Senator Hagerty, we'll have the rules of the road. It won't be a patina of consumer enforcement. It will be real consumer enforcement, investor protection.
And a down payment for a house.
Both by the CFTC, the SEC, and the bank regulators. Well, look, again, Bitcoin is an asset. You can determine if you think it's going to go up in value or down in value, just like stocks and bonds or other investments that people have on their financial statement to secure their financial statement for a net worth purposes, or to liquidate for a down payment.
Okay.
So I think it's a financial asset.
Well,
our bills will make it a more secure one,
right,
and one that's better for, I think, all households and businesses.
I'm out of time, so I'm going to have to leave it there. Thank you, Congressman.